Welcome back to Firewatch Live. I'm Tom DeSorcy, and we're here with leadership expert Scott Metzler. In our last session, we talked about how leadership is aspirational, taking people where they need to go. Well, today we're focusing on something critical to making that journey possible, and that's trust. If people are going to follow, they need to trust the leader guiding them. Scott is going to break down how trust is built in leadership, from giving trust to getting it, and being consistent and doing what you say you're going to do. And when things don't go as planned, real leadership is about owning those moments, being transparent, and earning back trust through your actions. Scott, it's nice to have you here once again.
Tom,
Welcome
thank you.
back.
It's good to be here.
When you talk about we're leaning toward the 10 leaderships, the 10 timeless leadership truths we're focusing on in our series, and I kind of think trust has got to be up there in the top 4. I mean, this is cornerstone kind of stuff. Am I on the right track when I say that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all of these sort of dimensions of leadership are important in their own ways. And this idea of trust, I think, is the thread that weaves its way through all of them. And so without relationships built on trust, the rest of the dimensions of leadership sort of weaken and fall apart.
Is trust, is it replaceable if you can't get it, if you don't feel you have it? Is there other areas of strength that would make up for it?
I don't know. I don't think so. And so, again, there are so many dimensions to leadership. So many of them are important, but without trust, nothing really matters. It's hard to do true and meaningful and honest work without this relationship built on trust. And so, in a very real way, the work of leadership is asking people to go to new places. And it's really difficult to leave a place of comfort, to go to a place of unknown, which may or may not be better if we don't trust the guide who's taking us there. And so the work of leadership is to see people through this navigation.
You may have trust without even knowing it then.
Um, yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like you're following me. Why are you following me? Oh, you must trust me.
right.
Do you have to say to me now, or am I saying to myself, do I have to work that hard to gain trust, or should it be automatic? You know what I mean? I mean
Right,
that's
right.
that. I mean, I throw that out there once in a while. I throw that bomb into the room, if you will, where I say that I'm in charge. You kind of have to trust me. Is that wrong?
Well, I don't know that it's wrong. I don't know how effective it is. And so when we demand trust of others, often that kind of throws up a subconscious red flag, right? And so just like anything else, earning trust, I think, is a learned skill. And so it comes to some people more naturally than it does others, but there are certainly things we can do to earn trust. And so one of those things is being consistent. And so consistency often is just another word for trust. If we know that the people that we surround ourselves with, especially the people we look to for leadership, are consistent in their actions, consistent in their motivations, that sort of engenders this spirit of trust that sometimes goes without saying. Sometimes it's just intuitive.
That's kind of what I guess I'm referring to, is that it's sort of automatic. It's sort of there. I guess that's kind of a checklist item more so for me to say, do I have their trust, or why are they listening to me? Why are they following me down this path? It's probably because they trust me. Check, I've done that. I guess to me, does that make any sense at all then if I say that?
It makes a lot of sense, but trust is a dynamic dimension. And so it's really easy to lose trust. And sometimes we do that without even knowing, right? So, one of the things that goes into a trusting relationship is the idea that I, as the person in authority, I, in this leadership position, have your back. My job is to invest in your success. And if I'm not paying attention to those things, if I'm not making regular contributions into the trust piggy bank, often that trust is eroded, and we might not know if we're not paying attention. And so this goes back to the idea that leadership is human work, leadership is relational. And if we're not paying attention to those relationships, we might find ourselves on an island of distrust or mistrust without even knowing it.
Kind of a diagnosis kind of thing that you have to kind of do, I would guess, back and forth with your leadership in terms of how am I doing? Again, that checklist idea. And if you can go back and peg it to trust, then you have to do some work, I guess.
You bet. You bet. Um, and trust also seems kind of subjective. And so when people feel like the system in which they live and work is fair, that is a harbinger of trust. And so that's one of the sort of predecessors to a trusting relationship. Am I being treated fairly? Or does it feel like I'm being treated fairly? And so this ongoing dialogue between people in the system, between leaders and followers and co-leaders and co-creators, has to happen almost continually. And so we might not call it trust, but that dimension sort of weaves its way through all of our conversations.
Hey, from a leadership perspective, can people that are being led, can they recognize that they trust the person? Do you think they should be asking themselves that?
I think that's an important question. Absolutely. And so again, oftentimes trust is intuitive. I just feel like this person has my best interests at heart. But when actions seem to contradict that, those are good questions to ask.
How do you know when you have a person's trust? Can you tell?
I think you can tell. And going back to the idea that leadership is relational, it's tough to have a good, authentic, deep, meaningful relationship with another human being without sort of this foundation of trust. And so when we feel like our relationships may be getting a little shaky, maybe getting a little weak, I think one great question to ask is, how's our relationship with trust?
Kind of a, I want to say, exercise in leadership is that, again, that checkbox, that checklist that says, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's kind of a, I would think, part of that guide for the leader to look to and see, okay, am I doing this the right way?
Right. Yeah. So am I doing this the right way? And am I doing things for the right reasons? And so, that kind of gets to this idea of, oh, this person is invested in me. This person is invested in my success. So, it's not wrong for a leader to have personal aspirations, to have professional aspirations. But when those things are served at the cost of other people, that erodes trust in a big way.
Do you think that trust is universal across leaders? And by that, I mean, we are kind of focusing, we come from the fire background and that leaders and they kind of follow us, what is that, that you have to follow me blindly into battle. And,
Mm.
and in terms of taking that to the, say, corporate world where, again, trust being a little bit harder to earn in the corporate world versus, say, the fire and emergency world.
Yeah, I don't know that is true. I don't know that it's harder necessarily in the corporate world. I just wonder if the sort of conditions are a little bit different. And so, as I think about trust in the fire service, if we're going into dangerous environments, like actually physically dangerous environments, we have to have a high level of trust with our team, with our leaders, with ourselves, right? And that trust isn't necessarily built on the fire ground at the emergency incident. It's built in the fire stations. It's built, in these sort of outside extraneous environments. And I think the same thing is true in the corporate world. And so when we ask people to do risky things, and so we might not be talking about physical safety, we might be talking about conditions of emotional safety, or taking big risks that have big consequences. And so when the stakes are high, we have to have that trust sort of embedded in these relationships. And the same thing holds true. That trust is developed in the office, in the boardrooms, at the lunch table, right? And so
It's
it's
the
just this, it's just this idea that trust isn't a one and done, just like leadership isn't a one and done. And so you've referenced, the idea of a checklist, which is a good way to think about this, but it would be, I think, pretty short-sighted to think, oh, I've checked the trust box, I don't have to worry about that anymore, I'm going to move on to something else. And so trust just has to be this thing that is constant in our relationships and that we're paying attention to.
It appears to me, from my personal knowledge and what I've read, what you've written, that trust is, you can build on trust. You seem to get a little, and you keeps adding on. And I guess cumulative would be the word that I would use when we come to trust.
You bet. You bet. I often talk about trust as if it was a savings account. And so if I ask you to trust me, and you talked about this idea of blind faith and blind trust. If I ask you to say, we're going to do this dangerous, risky thing, trust me, I've got your back, right? If I haven't been making regular contributions and deposit into the trust piggy bank, it might be a stretch. You might not follow me where I need us to go or where you need us to go, right? And so, just the quiet everyday contributions that we make to other people's success, to other people's feelings of value and worthiness, when it's time to make a withdrawal from the trust piggy bank, those contributions go a long, long way.
Welcome to marriage, and if you just joined us, which is that relationship thing, that
Yeah.
again, trust comes into play in a lot of things in your life. And again, for me to say that I got to work hard at it, it should be, it should be natural. It should be, this is what I do every day. Is that the way people should look at it when it comes to trying to create trust?
Well, I think so. So I really resonate with what you said. This should feel natural, and often it doesn't. Often it takes intention. Often it takes hard work, because no matter where we find ourselves, we're often starring in our own feature film, right? And all of these other people at work and in our lives are kind of extras. They're the bit players in this movie. And so, when we're able to divorce our ego from our role, when we're able to focus not on ourselves, but on the success of other people, sometimes that's uncomfortable. Sometimes that takes some hard work. It certainly takes intention. And when we do that, people take note.
It's it's to me that you talk about the deposit and growing that bank of trust. I think the other side is true, that when you lose that trust, it is a lot harder to get it back.
Absolutely, absolutely. I heard somebody say that this little bit of wisdom that I've sort of brought with me through all of my work, and that is, it's this idea that you can't talk your way out of bad behavior. You have to behave your way out of bad behavior. And so even the best of us are gonna make mistakes. The best of us are once in a while gonna come up short, and we're gonna violate this trust relationship. Doesn't necessarily mean we're bad people. It means we're human and we make mistakes. When that happens, I think the leadership move is to own those shortcomings and own those mistakes, and to be authentic, and to, not offer necessarily excuses, but to say, hey, I told you this is the way we were going to behave, and I came up short, and I'm really sorry. And here's how I'm going to do my best to make things better, right? And we're asking for trust. We're asking again for people to believe in us, and that's hard work. That's humbling work.
maybe an example, when you, it's hard to give exact examples, but when you lose that trust, how can you tell? I mean, is it obvious that you've lost the trust of the organization at some point?
I think there are definitely signs, right? And so again, this feeling of trust is often intuitive. And humans are pretty adept at reading the room. And so when we feel that our relationship is off, it probably is. And one of the things that good leaders do to develop trust and to regain trust is to speak to the elephant in the room. And so to give voice and to name the sort of thing that's going on here. And so, Tom, I know we've had this struggle, and I may have come up short. I may have violated our trust relationship, and I'm feeling like there's something between us that we need to work on. Do you agree? That's a great way to open a conversation about trust.
Do you agree is the key statement there?
You bet. You bet. So, coming to leadership from a place of curiosity, right? And so, a hallmark of great leadership is to spend time in diagnosis. One of the sort of mistakes we often make is thinking we have to do that diagnosis by ourselves. And so we're always better when we invite other people into the process, especially people who have a vested interest in making things better.
In your presentation experience, when you're speaking before groups of people interested in leadership, and when you talk about the trust factor, is that, I wouldn't necessarily say it's an aha moment. Perhaps it's already, well, yeah, I get that. I assume that I'm trusted. Again, back to that, I'm in charge. You should trust me. Are you getting that from the audiences? You get that feedback firsthand?
Right. Yeah. So I often, get that feedback in people in the audience nodding their heads, people in the audience opening their body language, maybe giving the elbow to the person next to them, saying in a sense, oh, this is really important. This really resonates with me. And so, again, we often sort of have the feeling that we have a trusting relationship or we don't. It's often intuitive, but when we're able to put words to it, it really helps folks kind of, bring things together and crystallize the idea.
Really, when you're speaking before a group of people, you're really the leader in that room. I
Well,
mean,
I'm the authority figure. It remains to be seen if I'm the leader. So, I'm standing in there sitting. I've got the magic clicker that advances the slides or the marker that, records the ideas. And so, in a very real way, I'm in control of where we go. But whether I'm a leader or not depends largely on if we can sort of co-create this relationship of trust. And so, it's not uncommon, especially in a fire service audience, for me to, take the stage or the front of the room and to see the body language, in the audience like this. And they're waiting to see, is this going to be worth my while? Does this guy have anything smart to say? Is this going to be valuable? And, when I see the body language start to open up, when I see, the facial expressions and the nodding along, then I know, hey, we're really sort of forming and co-creating this relationship of trust, even with, perhaps hundreds of people at the same time.
and that's I would think the difference, when you're speaking before a crowd, it's, hi, I'm the leader today, right now, and then I'm going to let you go. It's not like in the fire hall where you're the leader. Here's where we start, and you build that relationship. So you've kind of got to do it quickly, I guess, if you're in that larger room and for that short a time.
You bet, you bet. And so, one of the things you just said made me think about this idea that when we aspire to leadership, we're really asking people to trust us. And so I won't be able to remember, exactly who said this pretty famous quote, but I really love it. If you're leading and no one's following, then you're really just taking a walk, right? And so leaders, our job is to invite people into this relationship of trust into this relationship of co-creation so that we can go new and better places together.
There really are two types of people, I guess, are there not? Leaders or followers, and you have to decide which one you are. Does that
Yeah,
make
I don't
sense?
know if I agree with that. And
Okay.
so, definitely there are times when it is necessary for a clear leader follower difference, right? And often that is in crisis leadership. I'm the leader, I'm making the decision. Your job is to follow me where we go, or to go where I tell you to go and execute these particular duties. And that is 100% valid, 100% useful. That's 100% leadership. When we're not exercising crisis leadership, often the most healthy and the most effective approach to leadership is distributed leadership, where instead of this leader follower dichotomy, we've got sort of this co-leadership opportunity, right? So when we allow, when we invite, when we encourage people to exercise leadership from their position, even if they're not the boss or even if they're not a boss, that's when a lot of the magic happens. That's when we have creative ideas that sort of, catapult us from where we are to where we need to go. So in a very real sense, a lot of leadership is a team sport.
You preach that you need to be consistent in your leadership, and that helps build trust. Consistency goes a long way in other avenues as well, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, as I think about the things we can do to undo trust, sort of the enemies of trust, I'm thinking about things like inconsistent follow through. And so if I repeatedly say, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what I'm about, and my actions don't back that up, it doesn't take very long for trust to erode. Inconsistent standards. So, as an authority figure, my job is to hold folks to consistent standards. And just because you and I might have a friendship or a relationship outside of work, when I hold you to that standard differently, everyone notices, trust goes away. So consistency is a huge piece of, putting the deposits in that trust piggy bank.
That trust awareness has to be second nature as a leader to ensure that you're maintaining that.
You bet, you bet. And I think that goes hand in hand with leading from a place of curiosity and being invested in diagnosis. And so we typically have been conditioned to look to leaders for action and answers. And when we don't see that, often we question the leadership capacity or capability. What I would offer is we do our best leadership work when we're curious and when we're in a place of diagnosis, when we're trying to truly and deeply understand, what's going on here. And that often looks like inaction. So I would offer this sort of fire service example. So, what I know is in my community where I was a firefighter and a fire officer, we had a lot of residential structures constructed with balloon construction. And so one thing I know about balloon construction is often the studs in the walls from the basement, the attic, exist without fire stops. And so one of the signs of an attic fire is smoke and flames coming from the attic. One of the first signs of a basement fire often is smoke and flames coming from the attic, right? And so if we don't spend time in diagnosis, if we go right to action, we may get it wrong. And so if there's a fire in the attic and we send a crew to the basement, we're going to be behind the 8 ball, but will probably survive that mistake. If there's a fire in the basement that's showing from the attic and that's where we put people, that might be a mistake that we can't bounce back from. That may be a fatal mistake. And so I just can't sort of overemphasize the idea that good leadership is about spending time in diagnosis.
When we talk about giving trust, it is that getting trust that I talk about, but also when you say now in that example, we're going in the front door and you get the report back from the people that you're leading, but they're telling you that this is, these are extenuating circumstances. You trust the people that you're leading, that they know what they're doing, and you're going to take their advice or their information and make a leadership decision based on that. Is it equal or almost or more important to trust them as well, in terms of being trusted?
You bet. You bet. One of the things I know to be true is the best way to earn trust is to give trust, right? And so that's sort of an unassailable rule of leadership. This example that you're giving goes back to the idea that uh, trust is used on the fireground, but it's developed elsewhere. And so as a formal authority figure, my job is to develop people so that they can succeed. My job is to help train people so that when they find themselves in those situations, they trust in their skills, they trust in themselves. And I also, as the leader or authority figure, trust that what they're telling me is true and accurate. And so in a very real sense, trust goes both ways, and it really has to if we're going to have a healthy environment and a healthy relationship.
It's here's a strange question, and I want to know if you talk. We're on this bank deposit theme here, and can you transfer trust in terms of the room, in terms of leading a group of people? You've got your span of control, your 5 people or so, and you get the trust of just one of them, and the rest will follow. Is that an easy way to go, or is that a dangerous way to go?
I don't know that I've given that a lot of thought, but it's an interesting question. And so, here's what comes to my mind. Um, if we have uh, an environment of variable trust, and I say to you, you can trust me, I've got your back. I think the proof is in the pudding, right? I would anticipate that you might wait to see some action to back up those words. But if somebody else tells you, Tom, Scott's a good guy, you can trust him, he'll have your back, that often goes a lot further. So I think there's something to what you're saying.
We refer to the journey. And again, the journey is not just that one single trip. Here we are at point A, we need to get to point B. But once we get to point B, the trip is really not over because I'm still in charge for the next one. And it's important, I would guess, to make sure that people don't think of the one trip and that's the end of it. But we are on a longer journey that really never ends.
Right, right. Especially if the journey is about getting better. So if the change before us is, we're doing a pretty good job today. Our job is to get a little bit better tomorrow. That journey never ends. And so that bears, repeated conversation. Again, staying in this place of diagnosis, staying in this place of curiosity. We did a pretty good job today. How could we do it better tomorrow? Right? We invite people into that conversation. We trust what they have to say. We co-create this aspirational future together.
Is it easy to check the balance in the trust bank?
Well, it's pretty easy to check the balance when you're overdrawn, right? So when I ask for trust and the answer is absolutely not, I've just checked the balance and I've gotten some pretty meaningful feedback, right? But yeah, I think it's easy to check the balance in the trust bank if we're paying attention on a day-to-day basis, if we're in relationship, if we're sort of taking the temperature of the room and the temperature of the people. Again, I'm fond of saying we can measure the strength of our leadership by the strength of our relationships, and measuring the trust, it kind of goes along with that.
And when you have a room of 150 people listening to what you have to say, do you feel you have the room, or do you feel for the most part you've got trust?
Well, I can feel when I do, and I can feel when I don't. I'd put it like that.
And that's the sign of a skilled leader that can recognize, I would think, that the trust is no longer there.
Right, right. And so, it goes back to, sort of, I feel like a one-trick pony because I'm saying the same thing over and over. When I feel like I've lost the trust in the room, I have to be in diagnosis. I have to lead with curiosity, and that has to happen in real time. I can't call a timeout and come back tomorrow. We've got to figure this out right now. So, yeah.
I appreciate your time once again, Scott.
Tom, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Again, that wraps up today's session of Firewatch Live. And again, thanks, Scott, for your thoughts on trust and leadership. We certainly hope today's conversation helped you see how essential trust is in guiding others effectively and how it's something that must be earned and re-earned. Next time, we'll discuss the challenges leaders face when taking risks and how to navigate those moments without losing sight of your team. It's sure to be an insightful session. I hope you can join us then. Goodbye.